ularda kulak tüşkemiz var kendine aldık. Anne diyen kızlar bilen o sağlam kayıp anda oldu yok. Anda cimci tutup gitti anda da bunda iş bana gel kılmadan.
I asked the Chinese government, where is my brother?
There is no justifiable reason that Xinjiang authorities can detain my father.
My sister, who you have abducted 5 months ago, I need to know if she's alive or not.
My mother was taken away by Chinese authorities to a concentration camp.
And when you look at the satellite photos, it's haunting. Over and over again, these enormous compounds. In terms of the infrastructure, the number of people that can be held at any one time, this is unprecedented.
Bir siklop minutun içinde göreleydiğin üydüklerimni göremey.
Xitoy hukumatiga nisbatan hozir Uyg'urlar bor. Inson sanalishdan o'tib ketdi. Bu xuddi fan texnika o'rinlarida chashqanni sinab qilgandek.
这个具体的不方便多说，因为这个很多安防这方面它是涉及到生命的，它是生命的。 所以说，你可能看到觉得这个摄像头它只是一个摄像头，但是你实质不知道它可能就会根据你的这个人，你在摄像头下面走过去，它会有你所有的信息。
那他们会不会觉得人权是有干涉？没有人权，这没有人权，不是干涉，他没有人权。
Just one of millions of voices the Chinese government doesn't want you to hear. Secretly recorded inside a detention camp, somewhere over these mountains.
Ayalım bilen haberleşmegile. Yani 2 yıl bolup git bardı.
This is Sadajan. His wife Moyaser went to visit her parents in China. She never returned.
Psixический tarafından ulanınki bir tüz ballık, bir anlık mehirsiz ösüp.
Neither he nor their 3 children have seen Moyaser since she was put in what Beijing calls education and training centers over 2 years ago. Soon after being detained, his wife managed to smuggle out a short video from inside what looks like a detention camp. It seems to show incarceration on an almost industrial scale. These were her final words to her family. Sadajan, a campaigner for Uyghur rights, wants to find out when his wife might be released, if ever. He's in Kazakhstan on his way to the Chinese border. Journalists are not welcome, so we're filming discreetly on a phone.
Mağanana ne gereği Xitayның simkası var o telefonu. Tuğusqanдар var edi, soğan звондау.
Sadajan wants to call a contact inside China. But the Chinese authorities monitor calls made from foreign numbers. So he needs a Chinese SIM card.
Wey. Qanday ahvolinglar?
He gets through to someone who knows his wife.
Dada, men Sadirdan. O'sha miyasarlarimiz tinchlikmi opamlar?
Chinese technology is advanced enough to be alerted by certain words, so this conversation has to be in code.
Miyasarchu. Ama chiqishning nimasi yo'qmi, o'qishni bitirishning xabari? Wey.
Studying means she's being detained.
Shu hech qanday bir narsani tushundirmaydi, tashib etdi. O'zi qo'rqib turganligi, qo'rqib so'zlaganligi anglanib turdi.
It's become very risky for ethnic Uyghurs and other Muslims to talk freely to people outside China.
Adam bo'lganda shu Uyg'urlar, Qozoqlar bizning shu dinga aloqador millatlar. Buning ichida bo'layotgan, sirtda yurayotgan Uyg'ur Qozoqlarmi o'z ixtiyoricha bir mamlakatdan, ya'ni bir mamlakatga emas, balki hatto bir shahargami yoki bir rayondan, ya'ni bir rayongami o'z ixtiyori berib chiqolmaydigan üstü ochiq bir turmining ichida yashayotgan bir mamlakatning qishida turmiz hozir.
The region of China over the border is known in Chinese as Xinjiang, meaning new territory. The Uyghur Muslims who live there have their own culture and language. If Uyghurs here in Kazakhstan visit relatives across the border, they risk being detained. To investigate what's going on in Xinjiang is incredibly risky. So far, no journalist has been able to work freely in Xinjiang. So our best option is to film undercover. Uyghurs are under constant surveillance. Foreigners are followed and harassed. Only an ethnic Han Chinese will have the freedom to film for us. At last, we find someone willing to take up the challenge. He knows it presents real dangers.
我们也是冒着风险去做这个工作。这个对于全世界来说都很重要。
The Chinese filmmaker's undercover name is Li. Li is Han Chinese, part of China's ethnic majority, but even so, if caught, he'd face a long time in jail. Li's doing this because he doesn't like the direction in which China is heading.
就是外面的传言就是说新疆的情况非常的严重，当地的人没有人权。
The fate of Uyghurs and other Muslims in Xinjiang started to change decisively 7 years ago when China got a new leader. China's president is Xi Jinping. He's given himself the job for life. He's the most authoritarian Chinese leader since Chairman Mao, and he has a vision for a new, powerful China.
Xi Jinping comes to power in 2012, and he's invested a lot of energy in establishing greater controls over speech. There's a lot less room for dissent in Xi's China. Now, what is China? It's a place that is defined by Han Chinese traditions, the Han Chinese official language of Mandarin. And there is increasingly little space for Uyghurs in this imagination of what China is.
The part of China that our undercover filmmaker Li is flying into is the country's largest region. Uyghurs make up just under half of Xinjiang's 22 million strong population. Most of the rest are ethnic Han Chinese. Beijing's plan is to turn the Uyghurs into what they consider good Chinese citizens. Our undercover filmmaker Li touches down in Xinjiang's capital, Urumqi. It's the first time he's been to the region. It's immediately obvious that it's not like other parts of China or anywhere else he's been to.
新疆对我来说是一个很神秘的地方。反正街头上很多镜头，然后感觉就是非常的紧张。然后我到了以后，感觉基本上到处都是警察。气氛非常的，肯定是很紧张。
Li is posing as a businessman, looking for new opportunities whilst on holiday. Some things can be filmed openly here, but photography in many places is forbidden. So shots of the huge presence of the police state have to be snatched. We have to record people without their knowledge in order to reflect their honest opinions. This is one of the first times that critical voices have been recorded inside Xinjiang. For that reason, people's identities have been disguised. Li is being given a tour of the capital by a local Han Chinese contact.
这是电竞赛，他几乎每个路口到下面路口每200米有一个港口。你看这就是现在哪里？你知道吧？这块儿你看这就是一个，看这个200米都不到，现在200米都不到，这就是一个啊。
In the last few years, thousands of police stations have been built across Xinjiang. Travelling with a Uyghur taxi driver, Li discovers there's one rule for Han Chinese like him at checkpoints, and another for Uyghurs. Li secretly films himself going through several checkpoints on the streets.
我发现一个问题，就是汉人和我们经过就很随便，不需要怎么检查，但是维吾尔族的人，他们要查他们的身份证，所有的行李都要经过机器扫描。
For more than half a century, the government has encouraged Han Chinese to settle in this frontier province. Although the Chinese government denies discrimination, increasingly, most Uyghurs feel like second-class citizens.
Uyghurs are seen in the official document, they're supposed to be equal. Once you get a little bit below the surface, then you start to see the language of backwardness and the sense that Uyghurs might be inherently a threat.
In a taxi with a Han Chinese driver, the conversation soon turns to relations between Han Chinese and Uyghurs.
现在新疆主要的精力都放在内地上，因为新疆呢10几年前出过很大的事故，在那时候很惨。
In 2009, thousands of Uyghurs rioted after police suppressed peaceful protests against the killing of 2 Uyghurs in another part of China. Almost 200 people, mainly Han Chinese, were killed. During the violence and police crackdown that followed, an unknown number of Uyghurs were killed and thousands imprisoned.
This was a watershed moment in the recent history of Xinjiang. The view of Uyghurs among Han Chinese changed dramatically.
3 years ago, President Xi brought in a strongman who had won his reputation by pacifying Tibet, Chen Cheng-guo.
In Tibet, he had earned a reputation as an official who could control dissent, who could control resistance to Chinese rule.
Chen Cheng-guo ramped up the security campaign in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs. It was named Strike Hard. Several days into his trip, our undercover filmmaker Lee gets an introduction from a contact to a party official who heads a security department in an arm of Xinjiang's government. It's a unique chance to hear from an official in Chen Cheng-guo's administration, and he's surprisingly candid.
特殊形势我们有些事我做的非常过分。你在马路上走，像那个围乱似的，警察一看见就回来。你如果说检查你不让检查就，你咋检查呢？咋了？有人说关起来，关了半年，不需要走程序啊。那他们会不会觉得人权受干涉？他就没有人权，这没有人权，不是干涉，他就没有人权。
This stark admission on camera that Uyghurs have no human rights is the first by a Chinese official. To understand what he means by this and the scale of the abuse, the trail starts with the story of the missing. This is Gulzire, a Uyghur refugee living in Germany. 18 months ago, she received a chilling voice message from her sister.
Mağlanan günü məktəb gidib bəhçəkilər kipdən onu gəp. Məni faqat izləmə. Bizə işləb birsə deyəndə gəplənçü. Şununla bir xil bəklam qorxdum.
Gulzire's sister, Gulgina, was living in Malaysia but decided to go back to Shenzhen when their parents stopped replying to messages.
Şu ketgəndən keyin biz deyişib alğandıq. Hər həftədə bir qitim baş sürtünü almashtırğan bolğandı. Sağlam, özünün sağ-salamat turub atqandı, mənə yetkizməkçi. Amma tuyuqsuzlam 2018 birinci ayda singlimning oqitam surdi bir qarang'i uyda, yerim qarang'i gavda. Shuning bilan men singlimni izlashga boshladim.
A month later, Gulzire was told by a friend in Xinjiang that her sister was studying. Again, this was code for being detained by the Chinese authorities. No one knew when Gulgina would be released.
Eng axir 47 sekundlik gapni shu 26-chisilar. Aeroportda deb qo'yibdi, ondan keyin men uning ovozini anglab baxmadim. Kunda ya 2-3 kunda bir anglab qo'ymanchi bu ovozlarni, sonimniki ovozlarini.
Gap qaytirib qo'ysa, gap qaytirib qo'ysam men aytadiganlarga men do'stimnikidan anglab olman. Ammo mo'g'in Xudoy Muhammadning o'zini asrag'anida.
Manga qotgandek. Burunqi ovozlarni anglab shu o'zimga tasalli topaman. Ammo ko'nglim bek yerim bo'ldi.
Thousands of other Uyghurs living abroad also lost contact with relatives in Xinjiang around the same time. Neither they nor Gulzira knew then that this was just the beginning of the largest incarceration of an ethnic group since World War II.